So now we're going to do hypothesis testing. In testing hypothesis on the population means, follow the following steps. The first one is to state the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. And then the second one is determine the test statistics that will be used to conduct the hypothesis testing, then calculate its value. The third one is find the critical value for the test and draw the critical region. And number 4 is decide and draw a conclusion based on the comparison of the calculated value of the test statistic and the critical value of the test. So these are the steps that we need to do. We're going to be explained as we go through the steps. Number 1, as we go through also the examples. Number 1, according to a study conducted by a grade 12 student, 155 pesos is the average monthly expense for cell phone loads of high school students in their province. A statistics student claims that this amount has increased since January of this year. Do you think his claim is acceptable if a random sample of 50 students has an average monthly expense of 165 pesos for cell phone loads using 5% level of significance? Assume that a population standard deviation is 52 pesos. So the first thing we're going to do is to understand the problem. Of course, we need to understand the problem in order for us to solve the problem. So according to a survey, a study, it's 155 is the average monthly expense. However, according to a student, when he studied 50 students, the average is 165. So is there significant evidence that will prove that the average monthly expense has increased to 165, or there's none? So that's what we're going to prove in our study. So the given here in the problem are the first given is 155 is the average monthly expense. So that's the U, because that's the population mean, because that's the population, that's the overall mean. While according to the study of the grade 12 student, the average for the 50 students is 165. So the average, because it's just the sample mean, it's 165. This is the population mean, this is the sample mean. Sa study niya, ganito lang lumabas, 165. Tapos sa study niya, the number of students is 50. Next, the standard deviation is 52. According to this, assume that the population standard deviation is 52. So the population standard deviation is known. Population standard deviation. But if it is the sample standard deviation, it's letter S. Letter S lang kapag sample standard deviation. Kapag population standard deviation, it's this one. So 52. Next, this is the level of significance, or alpha is 0.05. So according to step 1, we're going to state the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis, or H sub 0 or H sub O, is the, just copy this one to this one. So in words, this is, just copy this one. 155 is the average monthly expense, or the average monthly expense for cell phone loads of high school students in the province is 155 pesos. So that's the null hypothesis. This is what we are going to prove or disprove, or unprove, what should be the term for that. So that's it for the null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is, because this is, do you think his claim is acceptable if the random sample, if 50 students had an average monthly expense of 165, statistics students claimed this amount has increased. So has increased, ibig sabihin lumaki. So So lumaki siya. So dapat it's greater than 155. So the population mean should be greater than 155 because according to this one, it should be increased. So the average in words, the average monthly expense for cell phone loads of high school students in the province has increased from 155 pesos. You could use more than, you could use increased, more than, or other term which signifies na lumaki siya than 155 pesos. So it should, mu is greater than 155 pesos. So that's for the first step. Number 2, determine the test statistics that will be used to conduct the hypothesis testing, then calculate the value. So for us to identify the type of test that we're going to do, we need to understand first what are the conditions for us to know. So these are the conditions. First one, if the population variance is known, the population variance is unknown, and the central limit theorem, we're going to use the central limit theorem. There are two conditions. You should know the population variance if it is known or unknown. If it is known and it should be greater than 30, use the z-test. If the population variance is unknown and then it is less than 30, it's t-test. Again, kapag mas maliit sa 30, kapag mas malaki pala sa 30, it's z-test. Kapag mas maliit sa 30, it's t-test. Kapag greater than 30 or considered sufficiently large, and variance is known or unknown, still use z-test. However, if the standard deviation is not, the population standard deviation is not known, so you could change that to standard deviation, sample standard deviation S. So in concept map, so if it is greater than 30, known or unknown, it's use z-test. If it is less than 30, if it is unknown, if the population standard deviation is known, it's z-test. Kapag hindi siya unknown, that's t-test. Again, kapag hindi known ang population variance, use z-test. Pero kapag nandyan ang population standard deviation, yung gagamitin is z-test. So for this one, is it known or unknown? We know that ang standard deviation is known kasi alam natin na ang standard deviation is 52. Tapos it's greater than 30. So pag greater than 30, it's automatically z-test. And z-test, the formula for z-test is this one. Z is equal to standard sample mean, population mean, standard deviation divided by n. So is equal to, so 165 minus 155 over 50 square root of 52 rather. 52 square root of 50. Sorry, this is 52. So it's using calculator. So 165 minus 155 divided by parentheses 52 divided by square root of 50. The answer is 1.359. So 1.36. Let's have this 1.3598. So you could have that and 3 decimal places or 2. So next, we solved already the z. Let's have now the steps 3. Find the critical value for the test and draw the critical region. So you may not draw the critical region, or you may draw the critical region so that you would understand. So first is, it's because it's z-test, so this is the table that we're going to use for z-test. Next is, you should identify if it is left-tailed test, right-tailed test, or two-tailed test, and then the level of significance. You need to know the level of significance. So in our table, in our example pala, the level of significance is 0.05. Next, if it is greater than, it's right-tailed. Again, right-tailed siya kapag greater than. Kapag less than, left-tailed. Kapag not equal, that's two-tailed. Again, if it is less than, greater than, it's two-tailed. Kapag less than, it's left-tailed. Kapag not equal, that's two-tailed. Greater than, right-tailed. So, if it is two-tailed, kailangan mo i-divide by 2 itong alpha. So that you would para tama ang sagot. So, again, kapag two-tailed, if it is two-tailed, alpha should be divided by 2. And that's how you're going to know the alpha. So, for this one, because it's alpha is 0.05, and then it's right-tailed, so positive 1.65. So, Z critical, it's 1.645. So that's step number 3. And step 4, it's for us to draw our conclusion. So what we're going to do here is ganito. Kapag right-tailed, it should be the Z computed should be greater than Z critical. Kapag left-tailed, it's Z computed should be less than Z critical. Kapag two-tailed, the absolute value of Z computed should be greater than the absolute value of the Z critical. Kapag negative siya, gawin mo positive. Tapos kung negative naman to, gawin mo positive. It should be greater than. Kapag ganito siya, reject the null hypothesis. Ibig sabihin, kapag i-reject mo yung null hypothesis, ibig sabihin na this is the null hypothesis, reject mo siya, ibig sabihin ito, this is true. Kapag hindi mo siya i-reject, ibig sabihin this is true. If you fail to reject this one, ibig sabihin the average monthly expense of cell phone loads of high school students is 155. There is no evidence na makaprove na ganito, this is true. However, kapag reject this, if that is Z computed, this is greater than Z critical, ibig sabihin, i-reject mo to, ibig sabihin ito ang conclusion, that the average is greater than 155. So based on our example, the Z computed is 1.3598. And it should be greater than, because this is right-tailed, so it should be greater than Z critical, which is 1.645. Is this true or false? So this is false. So therefore, the conclusion is the null hypothesis, because we failed to reject. So we failed to reject because this is not true. So because we failed to reject, so the conclusion is the average mean is 155. So there is no evidence na makapag-prove na this is false, or simply the average monthly expense of so on and so for cell phone loads of high school students in the province is 155. So that's the conclusion. So next example, number 2. So blood glucose levels for those obese teenagers have a mean of 120. A researcher thinks that a diet high in raw cornstarch will have a positive or negative effect on blood glucose levels. A sample of 25 students who have tried the raw cornstarch diet has a mean glucose level of 135 with a standard deviation of 38. Test the hypothesis at alpha is equal to 0.10, the level of significance that the raw cornstarch has had an effect. So that's our example. So the first thing we're going to do is identify the given. The given are, the first given natin is the mean is 120. That's the population mean, 120. Pero according sa study niya, ang mean is 135. So the mean glucose level is 135 based on the sample, which is 25 students. So ang N is 25. Tapos this standard deviation is this population standard or sample standard deviation. its sample. Kasi sinabi dyan, a sample of 25 students who have tried the raw cornstarch diet that has a mean glucose level of 135 with a standard deviation of 38. Ibig sabihin, ang standard deviation na ito is only for the sample na 25 students. So, instead na yung population standard, so this is the sample mean, which is S, so 38. So the population variance is unknown. Tapos it is less than 25, so we know already what's that. What's the t-statistic? So 0.10. So for step 1, H, the null hypothesis is, or the blood or the average blood glucose levels for those obese teenagers is 120, and the alternative is it greater than, less than, or not equal? What are we going to use? Kapag may sinabi dyan increased, so it's greater than. If it is less than, or other terms for that, it's left-tailed or less than. However, kapag walang talagang sinabi, if there's effect lang, or positive or negative effect, walang sinabi na increase siya or bumaba siya. So, ibig sabihin, what you're going to use is not equal 120. Not equal. So, the average blood glucose levels for those obese teenager is not 120, because it's not equal, so ibig sabihin it's not 120 lang. That's for the alternative hypothesis. Number 2, we're going to identify the test. We're going to identify, so in here it's 25, ibig sabihin less than 30. Less than 30, tapos hindi natin alam population standard deviation. So in here, less than 30, ibig sabihin ito siya. And the population standard deviation or the population variance is not known, to use t-test. T-test, the formula for t-test is almost the same with the z-test. So the formula is equal to t x bar minus population mean s over. So if you remember, i-change lang natin to. So x bar is 135. This one mu is 120. S is 38 divided by square root of 25. Square root of 25. So use calculator again to solve. 135 minus 120 is equal to 15 divided by 38 over square root of 25. So the answer is 1.974. 1.974. So 1.974. So that's the t computed. So t computed is 1.974. For number 3, we're going to identify the critical value. So t critical. So this is t computed. So t critical. T critical is based on our table. So we're going to use this critical value for t. So for this we need here, it's the alpha. So alpha natin is, based on our problem, is 0.10. Tapos, because it's not greater, it's not less than, it's not greater than, so this is two-tailed. So two-tailed siya kasi not equal. Again, kapag greater than, right-tailed, less than left-tailed. And kapag right-tailed, left-tailed, that's one-tailed. Kapag two-tailed, two-tailed. Again, one-tailed siya kapag less left or right-tailed. Kapag two-tailed siya, that's this one, two-tailed. Again, 0.10. And then n is equal to 25. So the degrees of freedom is n minus 1, which is 25 minus 1, which is equal to 24. So 24 siya. The degrees of freedom is 24. And then it's two-tailed, 0.10. Two-tailed, 0.10. 0.10, so if it's been in the first column, two-tailed, 0.10. First column, tapos straight sa 24. Straight sa 24. This is the continuation. So 24. So this is the value. So first column siya kasi 0.10 two-tailed, 1.711. 1.711. So 1.711. That's for the critical value. Next, for fourth one, again, in our first example, kailangan na ang two-tailed, the t or the z computed should be greater than the absolute, again, the absolute value of the z computed should be greater than the absolute value of the z critical or t critical. So the absolute value of z computed, it's t computed is 1.974. Should be greater than 1.711 for two-tailed. So if this is true, reject natin to. If it is false, accept natin ang null hypothesis. So we're not going to have the alternative hypothesis or conclusion. So is this true or false? So it's true. So because it's true, so ibig sabihin i-reject natin to. I-reject natin to siya. So ang hypothesis natin is HA. Kapag true, ang hypothesis is HA. So therefore, the population standard at the population mean is not equal to 120. Ibig sabihin, the average blood, excuse me for my handwriting, glucose levels for those obese teenagers is not 120 anymore. So it's not 120 anymore. So that's the conclusion. So for the last one, this is our last example. The average IQ of senior high school students is 99 with a standard deviation of 155. So the first given is the population mean is 99. Tapos standard deviation, ibig sabihin that's the population standard deviation 15. A researcher believes that the average IQ of senior high school students is lower. Ibig sabihin, ang average daw dati is 99. Pero he believe na hindi yan totoo na 99. It should be lower than 99. So that's the researcher. A sample, to prove this point of view, a random sample of 40 students. So ibig sabihin, the N is 40 students was tested and got an average of 95. So based on his study, 95 lang. So based on his study, 95 lang. So he believed that it should be lower than that. Kasi di ba 99 daw ang average pero sa study niya 95 lang. So is there enough evidence to suggest the average IQ is lower? Test the hypothesis at the significance level of 0.05. So that's our problem number 3. So we have the given. Number 1, the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is, copy this one, it's 99. The HA, it should be lower. Lower, diba? The term here is lower. So kapag lower, ibig sabihin less than. I-change mo lang ito ng less than. So kapag less than, it's left-tailed. Next, number 2 is what type of test? It is greater than 40. So, greater than 30 pala. Greater than 30, ibig sabihin, z-test. Z computed. So, z computed, it's x bar minus population mean over standard deviation over n. So, x bar, it's 95 minus 99 over this population standard deviation, it's 15 square root of 40. So, calculator, 95 minus 99 divided by 15 over square root of 40. The answer is negative 1.687. Negative 1.687. So, number 3. So, alpha is 0.05 and it's left-tailed. Left-tailed siya kasi less than. So, based on our table, excuse me, where is the table? So, alpha is 0.05 left-tailed. So, negative. So, Z critical, it's negative 1.645. So it's negative 16 that's what. Negative 1.645. So based on our example, kailangan na si Z computed should be less than kasi it's left-tailed. So it should be less than. Si Z computed, it's negative 1.687. This is the Z computed should be less than negative 1.645. So is this true or false? Is it true or false? So this is true. So this is true. Kapag true, the conclusion is that the alternative hypothesis. So, ibig sabihin, totoo talaga na less than. Ibig sabihin, hindi ang IQ nila is 99. So, it should be less than 99 ang IQ pala ng senior high school students. So, you should prove that this is wrong. That your IQ is higher than 99. So, that's for the hypothesis testing. So one way also for identifying this one, if you would be confused kasi negative siya, less than siya. So kunin mo absolute value nito, tapos it should be greater than. So, or overall, kapag ganito, overall, there's also one way kapag to prove that if you're going to reject the null hypothesis, what you're going to do is get the critical value of the Z com should be greater than the critical value of the Z critical. So, ito lahat greater than lang siya. Kahit na left-tailed pa yan, right-tailed, two-tailed, this is applicable. So, kailangan ng the Z com should be greater than the Z critical. So, that's it. Thank you.